Shame is projected. So we project shame on other people, or in fact, if you take responsibility for what happened to us, first of all, it's that we probably had shame projected onto us. You're crap, you're bad, you're naughty, you can't do this, you're useless, you can't concentrate, whatever your school report said, all of that kind of thing. But equally, you're lazy, you're blah, 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 all those things. That's projected shame. And a lot of it, particularly if we experience tall, dark histories, a euphemism for trauma and abuse, that shame can also be toxic shame. And the problem with projected shame and toxic shame is that we internalize shame, so we make it about us. We believe it, and then we hold it. I remember talking about holding it very, very sacred. We hold it, and it becomes really super important. It's a huge part of our identity, and we're extremely reluctant to let it go. So I've talked about this before. It's just a refresher. I think the thing that I'm interested in exploring today is a very depressing part of shame, which is if you have shame, you will shame. If you have projected shame, internalized shame, toxic shame, it's highly likely that you will shame. And it might be that you wallpaper someone else with your trauma or your tall, dark history, which means that, you explode over people and you expect them to fix you and they haven't fixed you and they're abandoning you, those kind of stories. But it equally may be in how you behave, where you might actually, you might have a real toxic, really sort of terrifying fear of abandonment, as you might be with somebody who has that fear of abandonment. And then you're constantly threatening the relationship, or you constantly walk out, or you're never kind of present when they need you. Some of the things that we can do is we can sort of give people the silent treatment, which of course is to withdraw love. And just to remind you, which I think I probably said at the beginning of all of this, which is to think about how old do you feel when you're anxious? Because when you're anxious, you might notice you're going to be very, very young. Generally, people say 5, 3, 7, you drop. You literally emotionally drop into being a child. So when you're stressed and unhappy and anxious, or when you're angry, you might be like 11 or 12 or 13. Most people find that you'll behave in that way. And that's where the shaming of the other comes in. Because if you think about how children treat each other, they treat each other appallingly. And a lot of us are acting that out in our relationships. So the problem that we have is if we have shame, we have a tendency to pass it on. And certainly as a parent, I know when I first started to learn about shame, it really staggered me how easily I could be shaming my children, by threatening them. And not threatening them in any horrible way, but it's saying, if you don't do what I say, I'm going to take this away. Very simple. If you don't do this, then you can't go out because you're not behaving as I think you should. So I remember a long time ago, when I really first started doing all of this kind of work, really finding it extremely puzzling. How do I manage my children without shaming them or threatening them in any way? How do I do that? And that was a really hilarious moment many, many times, just thinking, it's too easy to resort to anger. It's too easy to resort to threat. It's too easy to resort to withdrawing things. And it's a real challenge, actually, not to do that. But if you have shame, you will shame. And it's about paying attention. What happens when you're fighting? Even today, I was working with somebody who's incredibly shaming and humiliating over their partner when they get upset. And when they're upset, they think that that's justified. But actually what they're doing is they're really shaming their partner. And that's what a lot of us will do in being hurt and upset. So exploring shame and managing triggers. I think if I was going to give you homework as a result of just what I've said, it would be to really pay attention to how are you behaving? Where are you abandoning the other person? Where are you threatening the other person, be they little or big? Where are you acting out? Because not only do we act out, but we act in. And then, of course, when we feel shame, we can really humiliate ourselves, and we can be absolutely, probably far more vile to ourselves than anyone else ever was, certainly verbally. And that's one of the things, the other thing we do, we'll act out, but we'll also act in. And it's about finding ways to perhaps start to stop that. So exploring shame and managing triggers. In May, I think you're probably aware, I have a very amazing 3-day shame workshop, which is in person in Battersea. It's, I think, 6th, 7th and 8th of May. So if this has intrigued you, it's a workshop, totally psychotherapeutic. It's not a yoga workshop. It's a psychotherapeutic workshop. And if you want to move shame, it's good. It's good for that. So let's do it. We're going to do a series which I like. It's called Anxiety and Depression versus Conscious Clarity #7, because there's lots of them. But anxiety and depression versus conscious clarity. So if you think about what I've just been talking about, it's where we act in and we act out based on our anxiety and our shame, because anxiety is part of the shame mechanism. When we have anxiety, we don't trust ourselves. Shame creates that rupture in the sense of self. I go fast. It's what I talk about all the time. So sometimes I might speak not necessarily super fast, but I can be quite light about things that I work with in depth, but I suppose I'm just more used to them. So if you haven't ever thought about anxiety as being a shame mechanism, as is depression, versus conscious clarity. Conscious clarity is about being present. And when we do Kundalini Global, the main thing we're always doing, especially as we open, which we're about to do, about beginning the entire process of the breath work and the posture from a place of presence. And it's in presence that the magic happens. So let's do it, beautiful people. Let's get present. Interlock your hands. Pull your hands apart. Keep your grip, but make your arms thrum. Keep breathing. Keep breathing, raise your chest. Keep breathing, raise your chin. And paying attention to what happens in the armpits as you stretch up, how the whole body changes when you get to the top. Raise your chin, take a long, deep inhale. Hold that breath, turn as far as you can to one side, including your head, and exhale. Come back to the center. Maybe your eyes can close if they weren't. Inhale. Raising your chin, stretch up and turn as far as you can to the other side, including your head, and exhale. And if it is only now that you close your eyes, please do roll your shoulders and bring your hands either into prayer pose or crossed on your chest. You have just made that massive leap through the magic mirror into a state of presence, which of course you can disrupt at any time by looking at your phone or checking where your water is. Take a long, deep inhale. Hold the breath and pull. Anus, sexual organs and belly. This is the root lock. Flare the ribs, tighten under the ribs. This is the belly lock. Tighten the neck, drop the chin. This is the neck lock. Long, deep exhale, holding the breath out. Squeezing. Anus, sexual organs and belly. Flare the ribs, tighten under the ribs. Tighten the neck, drop the chin. Long, deep inhale. Hold the breath, beautiful people. Pull, tighten, hold, and contain yourself. This is a lot about what we're talking about. And exhale for the last time, holding the breath out and pulling, tightening and holding, containing yourself. Inhale. Inhale, and on the exhale, bowing forward to whatever you relate to as an internal divine source or force. Inhaling up. And bowing forward on the exhale to whatever you relate to as an external source or force. Inhaling up. And for the last time, bowing forward to learning to face challenges rather than drop into being a child. I'm a fan of learning to face. So let's do some breath work. We're going to do a 5 seconds. So it's quite a strong inhale through tight lips. So let me just find the timer. So 5 seconds. And then exhale nose. We're going to keep it strong. Last 30 seconds, keep going. Last long, deep, deep, deep inhale. Hold the breath, eyes closed, pull the locks. And exhale. This is an amazing breath for when you're triggered. It's to reset the mind. So possibly notice a very exquisite stillness, possibly no mind, no breath. Stay with it. When you're very anxious and when you're very triggered, most people are very stressed and very anxious and very triggered. That's the truth. And most people are breathing 16 times a minute. So with that breath, with the inhale and the exhale of 10 seconds, you're breathing 6 times a minute. We have breaths that will go down to 3 or 2 times a minute, which slows the whole system down. So there's different ways that you can take over the stress system or not. If you notice when you get really triggered, there's a real sacrifice to choose to not be triggered. You really have to sacrifice a whole power position. This is one of the things to understand with triggers.